Hey everyone, quick look at this. See that? Almost 98% of you watching aren't subscribed yet. Subscribing is the best way to not miss any new infidelity stories and support what we do here. It's free and it makes a huge difference. Hit that subscribe button below. Okay, now to today's story.
It's really funny when you think about what time does to your memories. Or maybe it's not time. Maybe it's just distance. Sitting here now, looking out at a street I barely know, I see my past life like it's one of those old photographs, faded at the edges. But the main picture? Sharper than ever. Sharper, and oh, so different from how I saw it when I was in it. They tell you hindsight is 20/20. What they don't tell you is how much that clear vision can sting. 25 years. A quarter of a century I spent building. A life with Walter. We had the house, the kids, the comfortable routine. And from the outside, I bet it looked pretty good. Solid. Dependable. That was Walter through and through. Mr. Dependable. He could fix anything. The leaky faucet, the rattling car engine, the kids' scraped knees. But he couldn't fix the silence that had grown between us. Thick and heavy like dust motes in a sunbeam you only notice when you're looking for them. And believe me, I started looking. It didn't happen overnight, this feeling. It crept in, slowly, like a fog rolling over a field. One day you wake up, and you just can't see the other side anymore. Walter was always there, predictable, steady as a rock. He worked hard, provided well. We had our routines: Tuesday pot roast, Friday pizza night, Saturday yard work. For years, that predictability felt like safety, like comfort. But somewhere, along the line, safety started to feel like a cage. A comfortable cage, sure, with nice upholstery and regular meals, but still a cage. He'd come home, ask about my day, but his eyes would be on the newspaper or the TV. I'd talk, and he'd nod. But was he really hearing me? Or just the familiar sound of my voice, a background hum to his evening? I started to feel invisible. Like I was becoming part of the furniture, something functional and expected, but not really seen. I remember one anniversary, our 20th maybe? He gave me a new dishwasher. Practical, yes. God knows the old one was on its last legs. But it felt like he was replacing one household appliance with another, and maybe I was just the one operating them both. Is that fair? Probably not. Looking back now, maybe I wasn't seeing him clearly either. Maybe he was tired. Maybe he was struggling with his own things. But back then, all I felt was this growing ache inside, this longing for something more. A spark. A connection that went deeper than discussing utility bills and who was picking up Tyler from soccer practice. I wanted someone to look at me like I was the main event, not just the supporting cast in their own life. Then came Ryan. He started in accounting a few floors below me. He had this easy smile, you know, the kind that crinkles the corners of his eyes, and he listened. Really listened. When I talked, he'd lean in, ask questions, remember little things I'd mentioned days before. We started grabbing coffee, just as colleagues at first. Then lunch. He'd tell me about his frustrations, his dreams. He made me laugh, a real deep belly laugh I hadn't felt in years. It was like he'd flipped a switch inside me, lighting up rooms I'd forgotten were even there. He noticed my new haircut. He complimented the scarf I wore. Small things maybe, but they felt enormous after years of feeling like part of the wallpaper. He saw me, Erin, not just Walter's wife or the kid's mom. He saw a woman, and that felt intoxicating. Dangerous too, but mostly intoxicating. It started small, just talking, sharing frustrations about work, then about life. He was unhappy in his own situation, or so he said. Misunderstood. We were two lonely souls finding comfort, I told myself. Nothing wrong with a friend, right? But then came the lingering glances, the accidental brushes of hands. the emails that started professional but ended personal, flirtatious. I knew deep down where it was heading. A little voice screamed danger, pointed out the comfortable life I had, the family I'd built. But another voice, the one that had felt muffled for so long, whispered that this feeling, this aliveness, was what I'd been missing. It felt like waking up after a long, dull sleep. The guilt was there, a constant hum beneath the surface. But the excitement, the feeling of being desired, drowned it out most days. Walter seemed oblivious. Or maybe he just trusted me. That thought twisted the guilt even tighter sometimes. He was steady, dependable Walter. And I was turning into someone I didn't quite recognize, someone willing to risk everything for a spark. The fog hadn't lifted. It had just taken on a different, more exciting, more treacherous shape. And I was walking right into it, convincing myself I could finally see clearly. What a fool I was. But oh, back then, it felt like courage. It felt like finally choosing myself. Walking away from that last conversation with Ryan, the one where the flirting tipped over into something solid, something planned, felt like stepping off a cliff but believing I could fly. The decision was made, really, in my heart. But the hardest part was still ahead, telling Walter, how do you tell someone you've shared your life with for 25 years that you're done? That the foundation you built together feels like quicksand to you now? There's no easy way, no script, for that kind of destruction. I rehearsed it in my head 100 times, standing in the shower, driving to work, lying awake in bed next to him, his steady breathing a sound that had once soothed me, but now felt like a countdown clock. Each version sounded either too cruel or too cowardly. In the end, it just came out. Messy, abrupt, like ripping off a bandage that had fused to the skin. It was a Tuesday, I think. Pot roast night, ironically. We were clearing the table, the silence heavier than usual. Or maybe I was just projecting. He was scraping uneaten carrots into the bin. He never liked cooked carrots, and I just said it. Walter, I can't do this anymore. I want a divorce. The clatter of the plate hitting the counter seemed impossibly loud in the suddenly absolute silence. He turned slowly, his face utterly blank for a second, like he couldn't process the words. Then came the confusion, clouding his eyes. Do what anymore? What are you talking about, Erin? Did something happen at work? Is it your mother? He reached for the most logical explanation, the fixer trying to identify the problem. Anything but the unthinkable. And seeing that look on his face, that dawning hurt. That was the first moment the shiny excitement of Ryan dimmed, just a little, and the reality of what I was doing hit me like a physical blow. But I'd come too far. I pushed the flicker of doubt away. No, Walter, it's not work. It's us. This. I'm not happy. I haven't been happy for a long time. He sank into a kitchen chair, running a hand over his face. Not happy? Why didn't you say something? Erin, we can fix this. Whatever it is. We can go to counseling. We can take that trip to Italy we talked about years ago. We just need to talk. Communicate. Oh, the irony. Suddenly he wanted to talk. To communicate. Where was this urgency 6 months ago, a year ago, when I felt like I was screaming into a void? Maybe it was there, and I just didn't see it, blinded by my own growing dissatisfaction and the bright distraction of Ryan. But in that moment, his words felt like too little, far too late. They sounded like patching up a crumbling wall when I was already dreaming of building a whole new house somewhere else. It's past fixing, Walter, I said, trying to keep my voice steady, trying to ignore the tremor I felt starting deep inside. It's not about a trip. It's about me, feeling alive, feeling seen. I don't feel that way here anymore. He looked up then, a different kind of expression dawning, not just hurt, but a flicker of anger, of wounded pride. Seen? What does that even mean? I see you every day. I work hard so we can have this life. What more do you want? His voice rose, cracking slightly. Is there someone else? The question hung in the air, heavy and ugly. And I couldn't lie. Not completely. That's not the point, I deflected, feeling my cheeks flush. The point is, I need something different. I need to find my own happiness. It sounded so selfish, even to my own ears, but it was the narrative I clung to, my lifeline. Walter just stared at me, the fight seeming to drain out of him, replaced by a deep, weary sadness that was almost worse than anger. 25 years, Erin, he whispered. Our kids, our home. You're just throwing it all away for what? A feeling? He didn't understand. How could he? I barely understood it myself back then. I just knew the cage door felt open and Ryan was waiting on the other side, promising sunshine. Walter tried again over the next few days, pleading, reasoning, reminiscing about old times, pulling out photo albums. Each attempt felt like another turn of the screw in my own chest, but I hardened my heart. I saw his efforts not as love, but as attempts to pull me back into the quiet desperation I was so determined to escape. The house became a war zone of strained silences and whispered, tearful phone calls to Ryan, who told me I was being brave, strong, that I deserved happiness. His voice was the antidote to Walter's pained confusion, reinforcing my decision. Packing my first box felt surreal, folding clothes I'd worn in that house, sorting through memories I was choosing to leave behind. The weight of the decision was immense, but the pull towards Ryan, towards that feeling of being vibrant and desired, was stronger. I was walking out of the fog, I told myself, into the clear light of a new beginning. I just didn't realize I was trading one kind of fog for another, denser and far more treacherous. Leaving Walter's house felt like stepping out of a black and white movie into glorious Technicolor. Suddenly, everything was vibrant, exciting. Ryan and I couldn't get enough of each other. It was all dinners at new restaurants where we'd talk for hours, weekend trips exploring little towns nearby, lazy Sunday mornings where the only thing that mattered was being together. He made me feel young again, adventurous, desired. He'd look at me across a candlelit table and I'd feel that spark, the one I'd craved for so long. This, I told myself, this passion, this connection. This was what I'd been missing. This was living. We found a small apartment, nothing like the spacious house I'd left behind, but it was ours. Our fresh start. We painted the walls a cheerful yellow, hung bright prints, filled it with the promise of this wonderful new life I'd chosen. Ryan was attentive, charming, everything Walter hadn't been in those later years. He remembered anniversaries, our month anniversaries even, brought flowers for no reason, left little notes for me to find. It felt like validation, proof that I'd made the right choice, that I hadn't blown up my life for nothing. I was finally happy, truly happy. Or so I kept telling myself. But you know how when you first buy something shiny and new, you only see the gleam? Then, after a while, you start noticing the little scratches, the places where the finish isn't quite perfect. It started subtly with Ryan. His charm, which had seemed so effortless, began to feel performed sometimes, especially after he'd had a few drinks. He'd always enjoyed a glass of wine or a beer after work, but gradually, one glass turned into 2, then 3, then half the bottle. He'd wave it off, saying he needed it to unwind, that his job was stressful. And I understood. Or I wanted to. Lord knows my own stress levels were through the roof trying to navigate this new life. But his unwinding often turned into him becoming louder, more argumentative, or sometimes strangely withdrawn and sullen. The easy laughter we shared started to have an edge to it, Then there was the money. We'd both known things would be tighter, starting over. I'd taken a hit financially in the divorce, naturally. But Ryan, who'd seemed comfortably well off, started having cash flow problems. Bills were paid late. He'd make vague excuses about investments not panning out or clients paying late. Suddenly, those fancy dinners became nights with cheap takeout. The weekend trips stopped. The cheerful yellow walls of our apartment started to feel a little less bright, a little more cramped. The hardest part, though, the part that scraped away at the shiny surface faster than anything, was my kids, Tyler and Chloe. They weren't little anymore, both in college, but the divorce hit them hard. I tried to explain, to make them understand why I needed to leave their dad, why I needed this chance at happiness. But all they saw was the mom who broke up their family. Chloe barely spoke to me for months. Calls were stiff, awkward, filled with long silences. When we did talk, her voice had this brittle edge I'd never heard before. Tyler tried to be more understanding, bless his heart. But there was a distance there, a wall I couldn't seem to climb over. He was always polite, asked the right questions, but the warmth was gone. He looked at me differently, like he wasn't sure who I was anymore. Visiting them felt like walking into enemy territory. Walter was still in the family home, and he was always there. Civil for the kids' sake, but the air crackled with unspoken things whenever I had to pick something up or drop something off. The kids saw Walter, solid and dependable as ever, living in the wreckage I'd created. And they saw me, trying to build this new life that increasingly felt shaky and uncertain. How could I expect them to understand my need for passion when the result looked like this? The reflection staring back at me wasn't the vibrant, courageous woman I thought I'd become. She looked tired, stressed, and increasingly terribly alone, even when Ryan was right beside me. The passion was still there, sometimes, in flashes. But it was getting buried under the weight of unpaid bills, the smell of stale booze on Ryan's breath in the morning, and the heartbreaking distance in my children's eyes. The Technicolor dream was fading to gray. Life has a way of delivering. Its hardest blows when you're already down, doesn't it? Things with Ryan were tense. The money situation hadn't improved, and his drinking was becoming less of a background hum and more like a blaring alarm bell I kept trying to hit snooze on. We argued more, laughed less. The vibrant Technicolor I thought I'd stepped into? It felt more like a flickering black and white TV screen now, staticky and unreliable. My calls with Chloe were still strained, short, and left me feeling hollowed out. Tyler remained polite but distant. I kept telling myself it would get better, that time would heal things. But I wasn't prepared for the call that ripped away that flimsy hope completely. It was Tyler. His voice sounded strange, hesitant. He told me he had news, big news. He was engaged. His girlfriend Sarah, a sweet girl I'd met only a couple of times before the divorce, had said yes. For a split second, my heart soared. My son. Getting married. Then came the crash. "Mom," he said, and the hesitation in his voice was suddenly deafening. "We're planning the wedding. It's going to be small. Just family and very close friends." I knew before he even said the words. I just knew. And, well, Dad will be there, obviously, and Chloe. But we don't think it would be right for you to come. It would just be too awkward. Too difficult for everyone. Awkward. Difficult. He might as well have slapped me. All the air went out of my lungs, my own son's wedding, and I wasn't invited. Because of me. Because my presence would cause discomfort. I wanted to scream, to rage, to demand my place. But all that came out was a choked whisper. "Tyler, please. I'm your mother." His reply was quiet, but firm, heavy with a sadness that mirrored my own shock. "I know, Mom. But this is how it has to be. For Sarah, for Dad, for Chloe. Even for me. It's just too soon." Too raw. Too raw. After nearly 2 years. The finality in his voice was like a door slamming shut, locking me out of one of the most important days of his life. When I hung up the phone, I just sat there, staring at the cheerful yellow wall that now seemed to mock me. The life I'd chased, the happiness I'd insisted I deserved. What had it brought me? A cramped apartment, a relationship fraying, at the seams, and now, exclusion from my own son's wedding. The aliveness I felt with Ryan initially, it felt like a cheap sugar high that had long since worn off, leaving only emptiness and a bitter taste. For the first time, truly, blindingly, I saw the monumental scale of what I had lost. It wasn't just the comfortable house or the predictable routines. It was the shared history, the easy belonging, the unquestioned place within my own family. It was stability. It was respect. It was the quiet, steady love I'd mistaken for indifference. I had chased passion, and in return, I'd lost everything. That actually mattered. Ryan came home that evening, already smelling of whiskey. He found me still sitting there, tear tracks dried on my face. I told him what happened. He tried to be comforting, mumbled something about Tyler being unfair, about how we had our own happiness. But his words felt empty, inadequate. He couldn't understand the depth of this wound. His solution was to pour himself another large drink and suggest we forget about it, maybe watch a movie. Seeing him like that, detached, slightly slurring, while my world had just imploded, something inside me snapped. The illusion I'd clung to about him being my supportive partner, my key to happiness, just disintegrated. In that moment, desperate and utterly alone, I did something I hadn't thought I'd ever do. I picked up the phone and called Walter. It went straight to voicemail. I almost hung up, but a wave of despair washed over me, and I just started talking, rambling, tears streaming down my face. I told him I was sorry. So sorry. For the way I left, for the pain I caused, for destroying what we had. I didn't ask for forgiveness, not really, just sobbed out my regret into the impersonal silence of his voicemail. A few days later, text message came through from his number. It was short, brutal. "Leave me alone, Erin. You made your choice. Live with it." Reading those words felt like the final nail in the coffin of my old life. He wasn't just hurt anymore. He was angry, bitter, and I couldn't blame him. I had made my choice. And this lonely, heartbreaking reality, this was me living with it. Walter's text message echoed in my mind for weeks. Live with it. It wasn't just the anger that stung, it was the finality. The door wasn't just closed, it was locked, bolted, and the key thrown away. Tyler's wedding came and went. I saw pictures later, accidentally, on a mutual friend's social media feed. Everyone looked happy, painfully happy. There was Walter, smiling beside Tyler and his new wife, Sarah. Chloe stood nearby, radiant. A perfect family picture, with a glaringly obvious hole where I should have been. Seeing it felt like swallowing shards of glass. Ryan tried, in his way, to distract me, but his way usually involved opening a bottle, and the temporary numbness wasn't worth the headache and the self-loathing that followed. Our arguments became more frequent, the silences longer. The passion that had once felt like the sun had burned out, leaving behind only ashes and resentment. Eventually, quietly, without much drama left to fuel, it just ended. He moved out, leaving me alone in the cheerful yellow apartment that now felt like a monument to my bad decisions. Living with it. That's what Walter said. But how? The weight of my choices felt crushing. Some days, just getting out of bed required a Herculean effort. I started seeing a therapist, Dr. Evans, a kind woman with gentle eyes who mostly just listened. Talking about it all, saying the ugly truths out loud, how I'd felt invisible, how I'd craved excitement, how I'd blown up my life and hurt everyone I loved, was excruciating. But slowly, painstakingly, it started to help untangle the knots inside me. Dr. Evans talked a lot about forgiveness. Forgiving Walter for not being what I needed back then. Forgiving my children for their anger and distance. Forgiving Ryan for being exactly who he was. Not the fantasy I'd projected onto him, but the hardest one. The one that felt utterly impossible was forgiving myself. How do you forgive yourself for wrecking your own life, for causing so much pain? Some days, sitting in that quiet office, self-forgiveness felt like a distant, mythical land I could never reach. Then came another phone call, this one tentative, almost shy. It was Tyler. He and Sarah were expecting a baby, a grandchild. My grandchild. The news sent a jolt through me, a confusing mix of pure joy and sharp anxiety. A baby, a new life, a new beginning. But where did I fit in? Would I be allowed near this child? Would the awkwardness, the difficulty I represented, extend to being a grandmother? Tyler seemed hopeful, cautiously optimistic about building bridges for the baby's sake. But the shadow of the wedding invitation, or lack thereof, loomed large. He didn't promise anything, just shared the news. It was a fragile thread of connection, but it was something. Around that time, wandering through a craft store trying to distract myself, I found myself in the yarn aisle. Rows upon rows of soft colors. On impulse, I bought needles and a few skeins of pale green and yellow yarn, soft as a cloud. I hadn't knitted since I was a teenager. My first attempts were clumsy, uneven. Stitches dropped, rows looked wonky. But there was something meditative about the simple, repetitive motion. Click, click, wrap, loop. Slowly, painstakingly, a small, imperfect square started to form. It wasn't about making something perfect. It was about the process. Pouring my jumbled feelings, the regret, the fear, the tentative hope for this unborn child, into each stitch, creating something, however small, instead of just dwelling on what I'd destroyed. I still live in the apartment. It's quiet, sometimes too quiet. I think about moving away sometimes, starting fresh where no one knows my story. But Dr. Evans says you can't run away from yourself. The real work is right here, learning to live with the choices I made, accepting the consequences. Looking back, I see the life I had with Walter differently now. I see the value in the everyday commitment, the quiet trust, the shared history that weaves people together in ways that fiery passion never can. Passion is exciting, yes, but it burns out. It was the steady, dependable warmth I'd mistaken for coldness. I traded a solid hearth for fireworks and was surprised when I ended up burned and alone in the dark. I don't know what the future holds. Maybe I'll get to be a real grandmother to this baby. Maybe Tyler and Chloe will eventually soften towards me. Maybe I'll even find a way to forgive myself someday. Or maybe I'll just learn to carry the weight of my regrets with a little more grace. For now, I knit. Click, click, wrap, loop. One stitch at a time. It's not much, maybe. But it feels like building something, and right now that feels like enough.